I love that. I'm really inspired by this. I have, I've spent several years, if not decades, with the very deliberate intention of unidentifying. And to that end, I've gone the distance in removing the word I from quite a bit of my writing and my personal discourse, and, have experienced how much that frees me up in the realm of identification. So I love this idea of simply replacing the word is and seeing how that changes our relationship to the fundamental uncertainty that is inextricably bound to this reality, and to come into a more honest relationship with it. I love just how the world changes so drastically by these tiny languaging shifts. I think it's really remarkable.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, the language, the way you think, obviously informs the way you see things. So, I mean, this is partly why, for example, as a filmmaker, I show my films in theaters. They're not just, online. And I go to the screenings of my premieres, and one of my favorite parts is after the screening is over, I'm up front in front of the audience, usually with the actors of the film, and we're fielding questions from the audience, and the audience will have comments, and it never fails to amuse me how you can have 100 people in the audience and they're watching one movie, but you've got 100 different movies in the audience going on. If the movie takes place in your own head, you're watching the movie, right? Every person has their own responses, their own associations. What does it mean when that character does that? And so everyone's almost like seeing a different movie, and yet it's the same movie. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. And sometimes, people will ask me, well, what does such and such mean in this particular scene of your movie? And I always turn it around and said, well, what did it mean to you? It is far more interesting. I already know what I mean. I would much rather discover what other people see and what they make of it. But yeah, it's that kind of thing, how, each, person has their own story about, what might be happening.
Yeah, I'm interested to see, as more and more people relinquish the word is, like, just how the whole culture shifts around that to embrace more uncertainty, to embrace more, just these different perspectives of your movies, right? Versus the log line of it is this, and trying to funnel people down that very, narrow track of interpretation.
Well, yeah, I'm all for that too, but I also, perhaps not as optimistic as you. I'm under the assumption that maybe 10% of the populace have figured out how to think for themselves.
That's generous.
Yeah, it's not a majority. I don't see it as a majority. I don't see people thinking for themselves as across the board as most of what I see. Not at all. It's really down to about 10-12%.
Yeah, I'm in the habit of languaging the world that I'm choosing to live into and holding people to their highest potential, and speaking to them from that place. They can choose to meet it or not. I feel like when I give the people the benefit of my confidence in their ability to tap into their critical thinking skills, they're more likely to, than if I deny that in the present moment. So I am doing I am speaking an idealistic future into our collective field and trusting the public to step up to the plate.
I admire your idealism. So, Danny, you watched The Alchemy of Sulfur. What are your thoughts?
I wonder how you got into my head so deeply when we haven't met yet. was really on point for me. I mean, just her whole storyline. I loved the mystical witches that you brought into it, and I loved how simply you told these two different stories and how seamlessly they work together. The story within the story that the protagonist was working on, and then the story that she was living. And it had me curious about your process of learning filmmaking. Did you formally study?
No. I'm self-taught.
I mean, I know that you mentioned, you know, your perspective on reality shifted after Zoe passed, and that's when you had the idea to move from theater to film. But it seems like you have dipped your toes into so many different media as an artist. And is that, like, I'm curious to know your process around that.
For better or worse, or sometimes for better and worse, I've come to know myself as a multifaceted individual or multifaceted personality, maybe a polymath, I don't know. But it's just, for as long as I've known myself, which is a pretty long time, like I said, I'm almost 70 now, I've always explored different medias, different avenues as a way to discover outlets for the different facets of what I experience as of me. It's not like I have all these characters in me. I'm not like a multi-personality disorder kind of person. I mean, I might be highly functional schizophrenic, but I don't know. But yeah, I mean, you know, I have found that by tracking multiple different outlets for self-expression over many years, that at some point they start to really cohese. They start coming together or harmonizing in ways that could not be perceived of in the beginning at all. So this is something that I've discovered in my, you know, older age.
And I'm curious, because you seem very sovereign in your artistic output, which I think, you know, from my perspective, allows us to shift. I see our paths as being similar in terms of there's something that I need to express, and it's going to want to express in a medium that I haven't played with before. So I will allow myself to jump into that new medium and teach myself, or let it be, you know, kind of choppy and raw as I'm figuring it out. But I know that in the established worlds, that people poo-poo that, like, oh, you're a writer, you shouldn't be making animations now, you know. And I think there's something to deciding to eschew traditional publishing or traditional film production that allows us more freedom to express in this way. Have you ever been in bed with any of these traditional you know, publishing houses, production companies, whatnot, and have them try to clamp down on your expression?
Just publishing, but the publisher, Original Falcon Press, you know, they publish Robert Anton Wilson, Timothy Leary, and a lot of more kind of fringe authors, like myself. I would say I'm fringe as well, or underground. They haven't really tried, you know, because they're a publisher that banks on eccentricity, and so they're not, you know, trying to become mainstream or pushing their authors to become more mainstream in some idea of making more money. They just don't do that. So that's the only place. In terms of just personally, yeah, I wear a lot of different hats. You know, if I'm going to be describing certain identities, okay, I can be called a teacher, I can be called an astrologer, I can be called a filmmaker, I can be called an author. So all of these are labels, basically.
Right.
And one of the ways in which I have escaped I've escaped in two ways. One of them is this, just discovering I have little to no use for any self-image. So for the most part, I live without a self-image, or I live without any need to think about myself in terms of an image or an idea, whatever. I just have left that behind. Okay, I'm past the point of no return. And sincerely. And the other piece that has freed me up is realizing that, you know, what other people think of me is not really my business.
And was living without a self-image a deliberate process you undertook at some point?
Yeah, actually, you know, because I do so many things, I'm known for so many things. In some ways, I'm a kind of marketing nightmare. Who is this guy? How do we sell him? You know, that kind of thing. So, you know, I don't know when it kind of collapsed. I think a big part of it too was, see, I've undergone a certain training process through para-theater. It's a group ritual dynamic that I developed 40 years ago. And this is something I've been doing in groups for over 40 years. And the crux method of that particular somatic ritual dynamic refers to a process of becoming nothing. We call it no form. And over 40 years, subjecting myself consistently to the state of being nothing, to the state of being nobody, so that I could cultivate enough internal receptivity to begin accessing forces, impulses, emotions, images, etc., from the internal landscape of the soul dimension, and giving expression to all of that through movement, sound, gesture, characterization, and sometimes stories for the films that I would make. So I've been under the influence of heavy void. And happily so. I have no fear of being nothing or fear of being nobody. I mean, it's pretty much my middle name.
I love that. I was writing down under the influence of heavy void. It's pure gold right there. I'd love to return to the idea of fundamentalism as a language, and would love for you to unpack that a little bit in terms of how you see it playing out during this current moment of God knows what it is.
Yeah, I want to maybe offer an example many people might relate to. So whether or not you believe in astrology, I think most people probably know their sun sign, right? And even if they don't believe in astrology, they might sneak into the newspaper column and say, oh, what's happening with Taurus today? I'm a Taurus. And so there's something about the language of sun sign astrology, which has become incredibly popular over the last 50 years, that has in some ways contributed to this fundamentalist virus by, I don't know if it's like, you know, I don't see it as a conspiracy. I don't see like there's someone pulling the strings, getting people to do this or that. But what has happened is that individuals under the state of uncertainty, and they don't want to feel anxious, they know what their sign is. I'm going to go read what the astrologer says about, you know, being an Aries this week. What's going on? So as a professional astrologer, I look at sun sign astrology as just above the level of being totally fake. You know, just the next level above. And the reason being is this: that as I know astrology, the sun sign is going to represent an important, but only one facet of the whole individual. In my work in the field of astrology, I look at each and every sign, meaning all 12 signs of the zodiac, existing within each individual at various degrees of expression and latency. And so when you get identified or fixated into one image of yourself astrologically, I am a Scorpio, so I'm like the sexiest person in the room. It's this whole fakey poo thing that starts happening. In real astrology, the sun sign doesn't represent who a person is, there it is, that word again, as much as who a person over their lifetime is learning how to become more like that. So it's like a reversal. In the real astrology, the sun sign really represents something almost completely opposite to what the sun sign astrology columns are promoting. So that would be one way in which individuals get fixated thinking, and the thing what happens too, you get fixated on, any sun sign. Like let's say I'm an Aries, which I'm not, but if I say I'm an Aries and I just, oh man, I don't like Pisces, they're so clingy. And so you start developing this kind of archetypal chauvinism, where there's this, once you fixate on one sign, you start developing attitudes towards other signs. Kind of dismissing them or being envious of them. And it just becomes this whole fakey poo scenario people carry around in their heads at cocktail parties or wherever everybody's asking, what sign are you?
Yeah, it seems like it comes back down to identification because, I feel like a lot of the indoctrination and enculturation keeps us from knowing ourselves in any authentic way. So when presented with astrology, human design, gene keys, Enneagram, whatever it is, people just want to know, what am I? Versus learning the transits, learning how they're affecting global events, learning the subtle influences that are affecting the people in their lives. It seems to become reduced and distorted into a what am I kind of thing. And the other thing, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, the other thing that I've noticed about the fundamentalism of not believing in astrology, because if you type pseudoscience and Wikipedia into the internet search bar, the laundry list of the things that come up is so laughable, and you can see everything that the powers that were want to steer us away from. Astrology is a big part of it. One piece that I've noticed is, because I noticed you said whether or not you believe in astrology, I've noticed people who don't believe in astrology are people who don't know anything about it and have never researched it, similarly to the people who think vaccines are the end-all be-all have also done no research into them whatsoever. So it's interesting how ignorance has become this like fundamentalist dogma that, consensus reality has been guided to buy into.
Well, what you mentioned earlier about identification, plays into this quite a bit. To me, any place where a person is identified, to me, it triggers a trance or a state of hypnosis. So one of the things that I do, I have a new book that just recently came out called Experiential Astrology. And it's basically an approach to astrology that cracks open the symbols to begin discovering what are the living experiences, the living forces and influences that those symbols represent, and how to experience those, more directly. So one of the exercises, it's very, research-oriented, very experiential-oriented course that I teach. It's online. People can look up verticalpool.com, and I list it there. Anyway, so the fixation on one astrological sign, creates its own trance or hypnosis. And so one of the exercises that I present, so people can come into their own experience of breaking trance and making new trances, is to, the exercise involves a 12-day process where every single day you decide to view everything that's going on and what you're thinking about and how you're reacting and relating through a different sign. So the first day, I'm going to be an Aries all day. Tomorrow, I'm going to be a Taurus all day tomorrow. I'm going to eat more than I usually do, Taurus. I'm going to be a Gemini all day the next day, and I am just going to talk my ass off. So whatever it is, however people come into, and so what happens there is that you enter through the 12 days, a firsthand experience of creating these trances by fixating all day on a sign, and then breaking that trance the next day when you go to another sign. You create a new trance, and then you break that trance. And so it's a kind of learning how to break trance, make trance, create trance, make trance. And there's a kind of consciousness expansion that occurs anytime you can break a trance, because to break a trance, you really have to be aware that you're in a trance first, and that's not easy. A lot of people will say, "I'm not in a trance. I'm just being myself." I say, "Yeah, you're being yourself, and you're hypnotized."
And so, is this the course that's coming up in September?
Yes, it is. It's a 6-week course, and based in my book, Experiential Astrology, which you can also find at verticalpool.com. It's on Amazon as well, and the publisher, the original Falcon Press, you can get it directly through there too. It's also available in a lot of different outlets. It's a globally distributed book.
That's awesome. Congratulations. It's a big deal for an author these days.
Oh, thank you. I'm very proud of this one. It's a real distillation of how I interpret charts, distilled over pretty much 35 years of practice.
Mm-hmm. And what can people who are signing up for this experiential astrology course expect to come away with?
Hopefully, a greater access to themselves as energy, as humanity, as a person, as a gender. So it's really geared towards self-access. And for those individuals who are learning astrology to become an astrologer, meaning, to learn how to interpret the charts of other people, I think that they're going to be coming out of this course with a more empathic and a more imaginative way of interpreting the symbols, so that it can become a more creative process for them, not so textbooky and, dry and, kind of literalist, absolutist thinking. I mean, there's still a lot of astrologers out there that have this fundamentalist virus thing going on, and they will, statement after statement after statement following this, and this will happen, and no matter what, this will. So, and it's just kind of epidemic, as I mentioned. It's in a lot of different fields, and the common language of the people. People can't. And again, during the times, we're in such uncertain times, and the word "is" creates a false sense of security through the illusion of certitude.
I think it also creates a trap and a lot of fear mongering, because there's a lot of definitive prophetic isness being associated with a lot of like apocalyptic, cataclysmic, negative outcomes that is programming people to live into worst case scenarios.
Yeah, those, if you have a prevalent use of the is word, unfortunately, you're also going to be more vulnerable to external messages, whether it's from the media or this guru or that book that also uses a lot of the is words. It's like a contagious process. It's like a virus. It looks like a virus to me.
Mm-hmm. I get that. I see a lot of the downfalls in language as viruses myself. As you're speaking about this, I find myself craving some sort of online community wherein we're together sharing writing exchanges devoid of is, and playing together in terms of practicing fleshing this out of our language and availing ourselves to more uncertainty, more change, more transformation.
All hail the minority.
What do you say to people who say, I don't believe in astrology?
I say I don't believe in it either. I've been studying and practicing it for 35 years, and I still don't know why it works. I use it because it works. I don't know why or how it works, but it seems to work. And it seems to work best as a language. It doesn't seem to work for me as a science. It doesn't work as a philosophy or religion. I mean, I've never been able to use astrology to answer all the big questions of life. I've never, it just doesn't seem, it just fails, there. So I don't look at, I think it makes for a lousy philosophy and not a good religion at all. But it looks like a really fantastic language. It's very colorful. It has mythological references. And within those mythological references, there are it's like a multitude of stories and characters. And so basically my own approach is influenced by all these ideas. And so I look at the chart, a person's chart, as a kind of map to their story. And, I'm one of these individuals that believes that the universe is not just made up of atoms. I think it's also made up of stories.
Yeah, I've heard this idea before, and there are aspects of me that understands that to be the case. Of course, collective agreement, even our collective agreement about the moon, when you have people like Steiner saying it's not a real, living entity, rather it's a dead satellite, but at the same time, through eons and eons of narrative, perhaps the moon has taken on the qualities that we've projected on it. And then at the same time, I'm excited to evolve out of myth and story and move into a realm that's more vibration and frequency.
Yeah, I find them to be related. You know how some stories have a far greater resonance than other stories. And to me, resonance, the resonating capacity within an individual, I think makes for a far more accurate compass and source of guidance than any system or intellectual construct or philosophy or so forth. But in order to develop this kind of internal resonator, in order to actually have a capacity to recognize resonance and follow it as a legitimate source of guidance, I think you really have to learn how to deepen your capacity, not just for having an experience, but learning, to take more risks or whatever it takes to live your actual life, as in to live in accord with the existing conditions of your life, not the life you want to happen or think should happen if only this or that were different or a different way. No, I'm actually talking about the life you're actually living and how to align with that and get in sync with your actual existence. The mystery of existence, the mystery beating at the heart of existence, feels eternal to me. I don't, know it as anything more or less than pure mystery.
I love that. Yes, beautiful. Well, yet again, I have about 1,000 more questions for you, and I know we've reached the end of our time together. So you have a new movie out, a new book out. Can everyone find everything at verticalpool.com?
Yes, they can.
Okay, and is there still space open in Experiential Astrology course?
At this point, there is. I haven't sent out the e-blast yet, but I got a very big mailing list, and once I send that out, it'll start filling up. I limit it to 20, and right now I think there's just 3 or 4. I'm not going to put my e-blast out for another week. So what is this? Is like going on the end of July. If you're interested, I would really look into signing up before September. It starts September 23rd, but once we get into September, it's going to be a little tighter.
Okay, great. So everyone listening, you heard it straight from Antero's mouth. As you're interested in signing up, do it quickly. And I'll include a link to verticalpool.com in the show notes as well. Antero, thank you so much for dropping in with me and sharing your wisdom and perspective and inspiring me and all of us to relinquish our attachment to is and see what it's like when we remove that little word from our lexicon and see what unfolds in the realm of more and more uncertainty.
Yay, I like that.
Awesome. Well, I hope you'll come back again. I love talking with you.
I like talking with you too.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Antero. Have a beautiful day.
Okay, you too. Bye.
Bye.